Hey, welcome in to the full moon. Ow! February 9th in Leo, so we could say on top of it. Thomas Miller, and I am, so this is for Sunday, February 9th, but because this full moon happens at 2:30 in the morning Eastern Time, I'm going to release this on Saturday evening so that if, so those of you who are stay-up-laters might want to catch it. Those of you on the West Coast, this will happen before you go to bed. This is all U.S. time stuff, of course. And those of you insomniacs who just wake up in the middle of the night and want something to do, you might start doing your full moon routine. So let's talk about this full moon at 20 degrees Leo. This is kind of an interesting thing, and it made me think of something that I saw this week in the astrological conversations online about inception points in the chart. One of the foundational things about astrology is that everything has a birth time, whether that's you or whether that's an event, a business, a marriage. And I think that we don't put enough value on inceptions, but that's how astrology works, that everything is based on the time that something is born. And what's super unique about this full moon is that it is in Leo, fire sign, and all about making a statement in the world. So with the sun obviously opposite in Aquarius and the moon in Leo, and the only real aspect that this full moon has is a trine, favorable aspect, with Mars. And Mars is still in Sagittarius. Now, there's no other side of this that we can pull, like Mars is not in a trine with something, so we don't get a grand trine, and the moon is not trine with something else over on the other side of the chart. So we're dealing with a couple of fire signs. At least we have what we have, the moon in Leo, fire, and Mars in Sagittarius, fire. So I think this is just a great weekend to create around that, putting yourself out there. So the social piece comes from the sun in Aquarius. The putting yourself out there comes from the moon in Leo. And the extra oomph and good luck comes from Mars in Sagittarius, which of course is ruled by Jupiter, which is in the sandbox in timeout in Capricorn. But at least it rules Sagittarius, so hey, let's take what we can get, right? Now, what caught my fancy in the astrological conversations this week was the announcement of the presidential campaign for Mayor Pete Buttigieg. Now, look, rule number one on this podcast, no politics. We all, Republicans, Democrats, Independents, if you are in another country listening to this and don't even relate to what that is, we are all under the same sky, right? And it affects all of us. And that's why I just stay politically neutral. Why I'm using this is the unfolding events since this occurrence, and it's in the profile, so it's something that we all can look at and relate to, okay? Fair enough? There is zero political inference or reference associated with this. Okay, so let's call him Mayor Pete, like he likes to be called, announced his presidential campaign in South Bend, Indiana on April 14th, 2019. And I have not looked at all, and I don't even know if it would be disclosed if he follows or uses astrology. But boy, I'll tell you what, if he doesn't, he dumb lucked his way into this one because, for a Rhodes Scholar, this was pretty good, I would say. So the sun on that day was in Aries, fire, and it was trine to Jupiter in Sagittarius. That's Jupiter in its home sign. Remember how I said so much before Jupiter leaves Sagittarius? Initiate or do what you would want to do because that energy will not be back for 12 years. Well, Jupiter was in Sagittarius, trine the sun, and Jupiter was also trine the moon right where it is right now in Leo, almost at the same degree. It was at 19 degrees. So there's a grand trine. So the moon was trine the sun. The three fire signs were connected by trines. So the sun was in Aries, the moon was in Leo, and Jupiter was in Sagittarius. The further brilliance of this is, as I mentioned, Jupiter rules Sagittarius, so there was a ruling configuration, and the sun is exalted in Mars. That means it's happy. So you had an exalted sun in Mars, a ruling sign with Jupiter, and then the moon in Leo. Now, Mayor Pete first came to my attention from another tweet that was copied or something from Dan Rather, the former news journalist at CBS News, whose tweet basically said, hey, just keep an eye on this guy. And this was when finally he started to be in the public eye. And, knowing that Dan Rather has seen this a few times in his 86 or so years, I mean, he's way up in his 80s, that was an attention grabber. And I don't follow the political scene that much. I really don't. But I have seen this week that he claimed initial victory in this debacle of the caucus that they had in Iowa. And that was kind of a bold move, but it looks like the results are kind of turning out that way, or at least is tied for first, however you want to frame it. So in other words, here he is at the top of the first primary, and we'll see how this unfolds. But I just thought it was interesting that, how many 37-year-old mayors step into the presidential arena and by the time the first primary rolls around are at the top of the peak? That's the power of a fire-branded, Jupiter-influenced trine. Now, let's don't go any further. I mean, am I saying that he's going to win it? No. I'm just saying that here is somebody who either by design or by, like I say, backing into it, set up his campaign, the announcement of his campaign publicly on this very powerful energy. And look at where he is. Is that because of astrology, or is that just because his message is resonating and he's a potential top runner or top of the ticket for the Democratic side? I don't know. I would say the astrology doesn't hurt. In this case, it certainly doesn't hurt. And you go, wow, look at that. That's interesting. So that's why, I say don't ever bet against astrology. That's the amazing part of this. And, of course, that's a story that we'll get to publicly watch unfold over the next rest of this year, basically. So what do we have? Well, we have that moon in Leo. So that's, there's part of it. The moon was in the same position. We have Mars in Sagittarius. We've got that fire element. We don't have, this is not that kind of configuration, but what I was saying is this is pretty darn good. So if you wanted to initiate something under the rays of this beautiful Leo full moon, would be a great thing to do. All right, stay busy, stay awake, stay conscious, and do some creating on Sunday. Have a good one. We'll see you mañana.